all these ideas, none of them has led to a successful treatment. So we spent years in the lab, published over 220 papers, looking at what is this thing? And here's the big surprise.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Thrive State Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. D, triple board certified MD and performance and longevity expert. And on today's podcast, I have a really special guest that will end Alzheimer's disease. Now, as many of you know, the major leading killers in America and worldwide are 1, cardiovascular disease, 2, cancers, 3, neurodegenerative diseases, including Alzheimer's. Here are the major diseases that are killing Americans and people all around the world, and they can be prevented. What you'll learn from this episode, much like me reversing my diabetes and high blood pressure, is that there are some certain root causes of diseases that lead to suboptimal cellular health. And suboptimal cellular health leads to suboptimal tissues, suboptimal organs, suboptimal systems, and then eventually suboptimal performance in you as well as your health. That is really the path of chronic disease. Now, if you start addressing these root cause things, your ability to have optimal health, longevity, and peak performance skyrocket. What you'll also notice is that when we start talking about the end of Alzheimer's, it's pretty much very similar to the same protocol I take people on to reach optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. Now, before I introduce my next guest, if this podcast has given you value, please help this podcast grow by going to ratethispodcast.com/ThriveState and leave us 5 stars. Share this podcast with your family and friends, and please interact with the comments or with a review that will help the podcast. Also, if you haven't picked up a copy of my book, Thrive State, you can get 3 free chapters sent right to your inbox by going to thrivestatebook.com. If you like everything that you're doing and you want to learn more and you want to accelerate getting into Thrive State, go to kienvu.com/accelerator and using the coupon code podcast25 to take the Thrive State Accelerator online course. Now, my next guest is actually an international expert in the mechanisms of neurodegenerative diseases. Dr. Dale Bredesen's career has been guided by the simple idea that Alzheimer, as we know it, is not just preventable, but reversible. Thanks to a dedicated pursuit of finding the science that makes this a reality, this idea has placed Dr. Bredesen at the vanguard of neurological research and led to the discoveries that today underline the ReCODE report. Dr. Bredesen has actually held faculty positions at UCSF, UCLA, and the University of California, San Diego. He's also been directed the program on aging at the Burnham Institute before joining the Buck Institute in 1998 as founding president and CEO. His work has led to the identification of several new therapeutic processes that are now showing remarkable early results. He's also a New York Times best-selling author of The End of Alzheimer's. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Dale Bredesen.
As you know, people have had all sorts of theories. It's an amyloid, it's tau, it's prions, it's type 3 diabetes, it's herpes simplex. I mean, on and on and on, all these ideas, none of them has led to a successful treatment. So we spent years in the lab, published over 220 papers, looking at what is this thing? And here's the big surprise. It turns out that instead of being about aggregated proteins or amyloid or tau, all of which are part of the pathophysiology, sure, but they're not the cause of the disease. Yeah. What we discovered is that at the most fundamental nature, what Alzheimer's is a network insufficiency. So you have this beautiful network that requires energy to work correctly, mitochondrial function, of course, ketones to burn and glucose to burn and oxygenation and all these things, and requires trophic support. Can't have too much inflammation. There are a lot of Interesting parallels between COVID-19 and Alzheimer's disease, by the way. Requires not too much toxic interaction, all these things. So when things are good, you actually can make and store new synapses. You can remember where your keys are, and you can remember what you're doing the rest of the day. Now, what happens to us, for most people, as they get a little older, even over 40, they switch into a state where they're now not doing either very well. So they're not using the glucose very well, and that's because they have insulin resistance, which is why everyone should know their HOMA-IR. Critical to know if you've got insulin resistance. So now you've started to lose that source. But on the other hand, they also are not keto adapted. So they now aren't making and using ketones. So now their brain is just kind of hitting on kind of two cylinders. It's not doing that well. And they'll notice this, I'm not really that energetic. I'm not as sharp as I used to be. I don't remember phone numbers the way I used to be. I may have trouble remembering directions to places, all these sorts of things. So of course that, they use okay, you can use your iPhone to get where you want to go, fine. But the reality is your memory and your cognition is not what it once was. So what's most important from a biochemical standpoint is to become insulin sensitive. So now, once again, that glucose is able to be used appropriately. And by the way, you look at a PET scan, you can see Alzheimer's. The signature of Alzheimer's is reduced glucose availability and utilization in the temporal and parietal lobes.
This episode of the Thrive State podcast is brought to you by the Thrive State Accelerator. The Thrive State Accelerator is actually a home course that I developed using the exact same techniques I work with my celebrity clients, CEOs, and executives on how to get them to the Thrive State. The Thrive State Accelerator teaches you how to master your 7 bioenergetic elements. That's sleep, nutrition, movement, stress and emotional mastery, relationships, our thoughts and mindset, as well as purpose. In this Thrive State Accelerator, you're also going to get a bonus module on optimization. That's how I talk about supplementation, peptides, all the optimization techniques I use with my clients to get them to the Thrive State. Now, for some of you who are just joining us for the first time, you guys might be wondering, what is the Thrive State? Well, the Thrive State is actually the energy, the epigenetic environment we give to ourselves, telling our DNA how to act and how to respond. And if we want optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, if we can master these 7 bioenergetic elements, our ability to have those 3 things that we just said, optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, is at its greatest. And it also prevents you from getting chronic symptoms like brain fog, being overweight, feeling sluggish, acne, pain, all these chronic symptoms, as well as preventing you from getting chronic disease. So getting to that Thrive State is really getting to that state to master being that very best version of yourself so you could show up for you, for your family, for your business, everything that's important to you. So go ahead, check it out right now at kienvu.com/accelerator and use coupon code podcast25 for 25% off. Now back to the podcast. Are you a fan of checking ketone levels?
Absolutely. And I check my own. Now, you can do it by finger stick, but you can also do it by breathalyzer. And as an example, Biosense makes a nice one, which is the one I happen to use, but you can use other ones. But you want to be able to check either. If you do finger stick, you're checking your beta hydroxybutyrate, which is an important ketone body in your blood. On the other hand, if you use a breathalyzer, then what you're checking is ketone. What you're checking is acetone, and so you're looking. But they both go up. The acetone comes up more slowly and goes down more slowly. So it's a more general look at where you stand. Are you getting yourself into ketosis? The BHB is more of a minute by minute. So if you're really focused on how am I at 10 a.m. versus 11 a.m., then you probably want to do the BHB method. But either one will tell you if you're getting into ketosis. And you'll see, if you have a high carb diet, you're going to score probably 0 or close to 0. What we've found is that people who are doing the best with their cognitive improvements are typically scoring between 1.0 and 4.0 millimolar beta hydroxybutyrate, or between 10 and 40 on the so-called ACEs, the acetone level. So that gives you an idea if you're getting into this during the day. And again, you want to go back and forth. You're able to do that is the definition, as you said, of metabolic flexibility.
Tell us a little bit about the ReCODE program, and for any practitioner who might be interested in the ReCODE program, how they find out more about it.
Yeah, it's a great point. So ReCODE is for reversal of cognitive decline. And it is an algorithm that we developed that is useful to look to see, okay, what is actually trying this? It helps you to subtype and then ultimately to get the most effective treatment leading to the clinical trial that I mentioned. So we do have a ReCODE 2.0 program. We've trained now over 2,000 physicians from 10 different countries and all over the United States. So we have hundreds and hundreds of people who are practicing this. And thousands of people who've been on this protocol with some really fantastic results and better results than have been with any other approach to Alzheimer's disease.
What has been your best medicine?
Yeah, this is such an interesting question. Of course, I recognize that food is a critical medicine. And of course, Dr. Mark Hyman has taught us all about that. And Mark's a great guy. David Perlmutter, so many people. And there's no question that's key. But for me, the most important medicine of all is psychology, because people will often say, well, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that. And what I've seen is the patients that I've interacted with who do the best are the ones that stick with it. As Arianna Huffington says, micro steps, get that first thing, and yourself to change your diet, to change your lifestyle. It takes some work. And so work with someone. That's often, to me, the best health coaches are ones who are good psychologists, not just nutritionists, not just brain, neuroscience people.
I hope you enjoyed those highlights from this week's Thrive State podcast. To hear the full episode of the podcast, you can listen at Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are heard. Now, if you're enjoying the content, please help this podcast grow by leaving us a review at ratethispodcast.com/Thrive State. Also, if you really want to get into the Thrive State, people ask me, where do I start or how do I get deeper? Well, here are a few resources for you. Number one, you can pick up 3 free chapters of my book at thrivestatebook.com. In addition, if you want to go a little bit deeper, get to meet myself and my team, and get some online coaching, we have an online course called the Thrive State Accelerator. It's the same material I go through to get my clients into the Thrive State. Go to kienbu.com/accelerator and use the coupon code podcast25 to receive 25% off. And yes, I am a concierge physician at the VU MD Performance and Longevity Clinic. I have a very small concierge practice, but if you or somebody may want to be a client, consider applying at kienbu.com/VUUMD. And until next time, remember always, always, always that you are your best medicine.